continuously shame somebody, eventually they're going to become immune to shame, which is actually a much worse problem than whatever it is that you think you're solving by shaming people. So that's another observation that I think is true.
Well, I think I'll just say that I think shame as a tool is horrible.
Yeah.
Shame is not a parenting tool.
That's probably a principle that is probably well established. I agree. Hello and welcome to Raising Men. I'm Sean Dawson, and today we're tackling one of the hardest parts about raising boys, in my opinion, which is aggression. When our sons, they hit or they kick or scream, at least my gut reaction is often fear. I'm afraid about his future. I draw this line into the future that, oh my gosh, this is the way he's going to be when he's an adult. I fear that I'm failing. And often I react, or my gut reaction is to react with harshness or shaming. But our guest today, Tosha Schore, points out that aggression, it's not a sign of a bad kid, so to speak, but a signal of a frightened one. Tosha's the founder of Parenting Boys Peacefully and the Out with Aggression program, and she's the author of Listen, 5 Simple Tools to Meet Your Everyday Parenting Challenges. She's here to show us how we can cultivate peace in and out of the home with our sons. Tosha, thank you so much for joining us on Raising Men.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm excited for this conversation.
Me too. So you talk about something that it just absolutely struck me when I encountered it, and that is the bad guy myth. And the way that I would describe that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's this idea that we mislabel boys as troublemakers when actually they're just struggling. They're trying to make it work. And so, for example, data from the Center for Social Justice shows that boys are twice as likely to get in trouble at school as girls. And I think this is a symptom of that. How much of that lost boy trajectory starts with misinterpreting their reactivity as a character flaw rather than an emotional signal?
I think a lot of it starts with that. And I think you touched on something which is equally important, which is the fear that we feel as a result, because our fear is then driving our response. So we're in a fear cycle. They're scared and acting out, and then we're scared and acting out, and then we spiral down together. And so in order to get us out of this sort of whirlpool, somebody's got to change. And if there's one thing we know is that we can't change anybody else. So we got to start with ourselves.
Yeah, and we're the ones with the fully developed prefrontal cortex. We're the ones who, can control what we're doing. And by the way, we're the ones who are supposed to be training our sons to be effective in the world, right?
Absolutely. And it's possible. I think people feel like, I've got so much baggage. I'm 30, I'm 40, I'm 50. I've my parents parented me in a certain way.
Yeah.
I want to stop yelling. I want to do things differently, but I just can't. And I want to say that you absolutely can. I see people change all the time. But just before we got on this recording, I was working with a couple from Ireland. I have been working with this couple on and off for the last few years, and she got on and told me, like, I just want to tell you, like, I scheduled this not because there's a crisis. Everything is going really, really well, but I just wanted to have you in my world and be able to bounce ideas. And I asked how her husband was doing, and she said one of the biggest things that's shifted in their family and that has helped to stop the aggression is that they used to have this cycle where, and they also have 3 boys like I did or do, and they're now men. That's why I said did.
Right.
And one of the boys would get aggressive about something, or 2 of them would go at each other, and dad would just get all fired up and get scared, do that, forward fear thinking that you were just talking about. Oh my God, what is going to happen? They're going to kill each other. They're going to hate each other. Blah blah blah. And he would start yelling and being harsh and shaming and all of those things, and they would spiral. And she said, he doesn't lose it anymore. And that has completely shifted the dynamics in the family.
what a powerful statement. I mean, just think about what that's like from his experience. And I feel this because I was kind of that way early on. I found that my son could push buttons in me that I didn't know I have. Ordinarily, my whole life, I've been this real level-headed guy. I'm not quick to anger, anything like that. But then I found that my son could trigger rage in me in a way that no one
Surprise!
has ever been able to do.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. Yeah, this is what our kids do to us.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing, and it was a real unlock for me when I finally realized that I was screaming at him to calm down. I was like, "Wait a minute, that's insane!" Like, he's not gonna calm down because I'm screaming at him. It's only gonna make things worse, and I realized we were in the toilet bowl.
Absolutely. And the thing is we feel so badly when we do that. We don't want to do that. You didn't want to do that.
That's right.
It's just the fallback when our toolboxes are empty, when we're running on empty. It's just what comes out automatically. It's what
Yeah,
was done to us. It's what we see in the movies. We have to retrain our brains. We have to retrain ourselves in order to respond differently. And like you said earlier, like one of the things that's really going to help is to reframe aggression as not the sign of, oh my God, this kid is totally screwed up and he's a psychopath and he's a horrible person.
yeah.
But this is some form of communication. Like he is struggling, he is hurting inside, he is likely scared. His radar, right, his limbic system in his brain is sensing a lack of safety, even if you don't see that. And he's responding accordingly. So if we can get curious, there's lots that we can do.
Yeah, I love that term about getting curious or reacting with compassion instead of as a way I have to tamp down this activity, this reactivity that he's having. Otherwise, he's going to grow up into be a man and beat people up, right?
Right.
And so, what once we have that recognition, and once we sort of have this intellectual understanding, okay, this is a fear response from him. Now, what do we do?
Well, I think we always start with ourselves. So I always, when I'm working with a family that's struggling with aggression, the first place we're going to start is like safety.
Yeah,
But part of that is how we respond. So I like to start off with parents and talk about how do we get you into good enough parenting shape? Notice not perfect parenting shape, not I'm never going to make a mistake, not I'm never going to wish I'd said or did something differently, but good enough. That's all. All that do is good enough.
yeah,
And so that could be different things for different people. It might be getting support in terms of like having the physical presence of another person. It might be having somebody on the other end of a phone line in case you need to call them for support. It could look a lot of different ways. It might be simply telling your partner or whoever is living with you in your house that you're going to do some experiments
mm,
in terms of responding to aggression differently than you have in the past, and communicating with them what their role could be or what you want them or don't want them to do, how they can be involved or how could they can be helpful, or maybe the helpful is that they just stay back and let you do this for a while and you assure them that you'll let them know if you need help. But there's a piece about how do we get ourselves into good enough parenting shape. And I
yeah,
just want to be clear, like as we talk about the different aspects of dealing with aggression, it's not linear, right? It's not like, okay, you're going to do this and then you're going to check that off. I mean, we're
yeah,
all working on ourselves for the rest of our lives.
yeah.
We're not going to, we just want to be moving in the right direction. So everything that we talk about is like, it's a puzzle. All the pieces fit together. But I would
Yeah.
start there, and then we're going to move into really strengthening our connection with our sweet boys,
Is
because
the is the
mm,
difference is the difference in is there a difference in the appropriate response when the aggression is two boys getting at it versus when it's a boy and a girl?
I think so. I think for me, I mean, okay, it depends on the context and what's going on,
Yeah.
obviously. I think for me, the reason that I focus on boys is not about sort of physiological differences. It's more about how we as adults respond differently
Mhm.
to a boy's behavior versus a girl's behavior. And
Yeah.
that I think if we can't admit that, I think we're lying to ourselves, because teachers, like you said, right? Teachers respond differently, administrators respond differently, coaches respond differently. We respond differently. There are studies that show that we respond differently to even a young baby boy's cry than we do to a baby girl's cry. Like from a very early age in our child's life, the world is treating them differently simply because they've been labeled a boy.
Right. That's a tremendous insight, and it really affects it. I once had my boy got sent home from school a couple of weeks ago, and it was because he got into a fight with a girl, a friend of his that I mean, they're great friends, and they got in a fight, and he ended up holding her physically up against a fence, and I got called into the principal's office. He got called into the principal's office. It was this huge thing.
Yeah,
And yet, if he had done that to a boy, and he has done that to boys before, and boys have done that to him, it didn't turn into this enormous thing. But because
right.
it was a girl, it really did.
Right. Well, so can I say so? That's what I meant by like I do think there's context, and so I
Yeah.
think we can, if you know, if we're honest, we can understand that
Yeah.
because there's a
Yeah. I'm not saying it's inappropriate necessarily, but it's
right,
definitely different.
right. So there's a power differential in genders, and
Yeah.
so um, I think we as adults and all of this, and I don't want you to fill in this information publicly, but depending on the age and the history of the relationship and whatnot, like it would make sense to respond in different ways.
Mhm.
But I think there's always in the background this knowledge that we have to carry of men and boys using their power over girls. So
Mhm.
in this case, there could have been something like that, or there could not have been something like that. And I think the default is like, oh my God, he's doing this to her.
Right.
And what I would say is that we need to put safety first, okay, for
Mhm.
sure. So we want to make sure everybody's safe. But then the part that we lose it at, and I think this is true of schools, it's true of us as parents, is that we don't take the time to mend the relationship. Right? People will go to this
Mhm.
place of, oh, but it's trauma inducing to, or re-traumatizing for, the child who was pushed up against a fence, for example, to relive it. But
Mm.
that's how we build resilience is by expressing ourselves. What did it feel like? What happened? What led up
Yeah.
to it? What could we do differently? What do we expect? Do we need an apology? Um, what sort of mentoring does he need to be able to show up differently next time?
Yeah.
Like otherwise, we're just kind of writing him off as a bad kid, and we're basically throwing her into sort of a victim bucket.
Right.
And neither one of those things is helpful. It
Right.
would be so amazing and revolutionary if we could help them repair. And that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that they're going to be great friends forever. And sometimes there might be a rift that destroys a relationship. That happens. It
Yeah.
happens in adult relationships as well.
Sure.
But most often, especially when kids are young, if we take the time to help kids repair, then they can go back to being friends.
Yeah. In this particular case, I ended up reaching out to the father of the girl who is, an acquaintance of mine. Our friends are our kids are friends, and so we have a texting relationship, and asking him what her experience was and all of that. And it turned out that was she was really, really upset about the incident, but not because she was held up against the fence, but because my boy got in trouble. And she
Mhm,
felt
mhm.
like it was her fault that he got in trouble.
Right. I mean, and those are the nuances. And
Yeah.
again, that doesn't mean that what your boy did was okay.
Yeah.
Nobody's saying that.
Yeah.
But it's nuanced. There's more
Right.
to it. Like,
Yeah.
what happens to that relationship? What happens to her? Okay, she feels in this case, she says she feels bad. Well, that's not useful to their relationship either.
Right.
Like they could we could facilitate a conversation about that or a repair around that as well. So
Right.
anyway, yes, everything is quite nuanced, but
Yeah. It's
gender
it
does play
takes
a role. But if two kids are boy girl or boy boy, yes, there's some differences, but ultimately, first of all, we got to keep everybody safe, and then can we please focus in on that relationship. I always say to my kids, relationship first, relationships
Mhm.
first.
Yeah.
The social emotional piece first. Everything else you can learn later and make up later, but like we have to nurture relationships.
Yeah, we do. That's a really fundamental thing, isn't it? We're herd animals. And if you don't have a way of establishing and maintaining relationships with other humans, you're broken
And
in a
you
way that the culture is gonna push you to the edge.
right, and real relationships are relationships where you can mess up
Yeah.
and then repair
Yeah.
and then grow from that and move forward.
Yeah. So the bringing it back to the steps, the first step is about healing yourself and by fixing yourself, so to speak. What happens after that?
So then I have parents really focus in on reconnecting with their sweet boy. So,
Yeah.
some parents will come and they'll say, "Oh, we're really connected. Like we have good times together." Other parents come and they're feeling like, "I hate this kid. I can't stand him." Other parents are feeling like, "I'm terrified of him. I don't want to be alone with him. I'm afraid he's going to hurt me." I mean,
Yeah.
there are all sorts of feelings that we're coming to this work with,
Yeah.
but we have to take the time regardless to spend some one-on-one time to really nurture those relationships so that not just so that the child has some reserves of love to go on as he's moving through his world, but also so that we can remember that we actually like the kid and we can feel inspired to want to help him do better and help things go better. Oftentimes, I teach a practice called special time, and oftentimes there's sort of resistance on the part of the parents. They're like, I don't feel like doing this. It takes time. And then they'll come back to me and say, like, I thought this was for my kid, but actually, I'm really liking it.
Yeah.
Because there's amazing side effects. Like, for example, so many parents come to me and they're complaining that their boy never talks to them.
Yeah.
He doesn't tell me anything, especially moms, because a lot of moms are much more sort of verbal in their processing. And we want to talk to our friends about our feelings and how things are going. And we want our boys to do the same with us. And some do and some don't. And so they're wanting to get their kid to talk to them, and he's just not. And oftentimes, when they start this practice of special time, one of the beautiful side effects is he starts sharing.
Yeah. So tell me more about special time. What is special time and how do we practice it?
Yeah, special time is just a simple one-on-one time that you spend with your child where they get to lead.
Yeah.
So it turns upside down kind of their daily experience as young children of adults running their lives, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, if you have a young child, if you have a young boy, it's like, brush your teeth, get your clothes on, go to school. Did you do your homework? Time for practice. It's just we're constantly kind of pulling and tugging and pulling and pushing and
Yeah.
and and dictating what to do and then also what not to do. Stop yelling at your sister, don't push your brother, all the things. So what special time does is it gives him this timed little bubble where he gets to be in charge, and it's
Mhm.
quite empowering, and it's also enlightening for us because we get insights into his world. I often call it a window into his world.
Yeah.
That's where he might share something that he wouldn't otherwise share because maybe when he usually comes home and he has something on his mind and we start drilling him like a drill sergeant, he kind of clams up and shuts down.
Sure.
But if we're quiet and we're just following his lead in special time, he gets to share what he wants when he wants on his own terms. So it's nice, and you also get to see like what he's interested in
Yeah.
when you're not sort of dictating what's coming next.
Yeah.
So special time is a great way to do it. It's not the only way to build connection, but it's one tool that I love parents to have in their toolbox. And it has to be with no other kids around. So it's really like showing them I am putting everything else aside. My email, my work, my partner if I have one, your siblings if those exist, right? I am all in just for you. And that's an amazing feeling, even if it's
And it's
just for
just
5
one
minutes.
kid at a time, right?
Yeah, and
Even the
even if
other
it's just
sibling is
5
gone.
minutes.
We're just doing this.
One kid, one
Yeah.
kid. This tool is a one kid tool.
Yeah. I love this. And how often would you recommend people do this?
it's there's no one size fits all. I'll
Right.
say to parent, if you coming to me for coaching and you've got a kid who is, aggressive, very aggressive on the daily and multiple times a day, and there's sibling stuff, or he's hurting you as a parent, we got to do more. If things are copacetic, everybody's, kind of moving along in life and everything's or most things are going well and there's little blips here and there. It's like, whenever you can fit it in, if you can do special time on the weekend for 10, 15 minutes every weekend, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But if it's every day, I'm going to say, like, we're going to do this every
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he's screaming for help if he's acting like that.
Yeah.
And we need to answer that call.
Yeah. One of the big unlocks for me in a way that allowed me to keep in what I call my Sherlock brain as opposed to my Conan the Barbarian brain, right? One of the big unlocks for me was to realize that there's a tension in both of my kids, and all kids, I think, live in this tension of they want connection and they want independence. And sometimes they're feeling not independent enough. And so they're trying to assert their independence by saying no all the time, for example. And sometimes they're not getting enough connection. And so they're spending more time trying to get connection. And oftentimes the way that their reflex to get connection is to act in ways that make it harder to connect, to scream and yell or throw tantrums and those sorts of things. And when I was able to take a step back and look at the 50,000-foot view and realize, oh, okay, they're often seeking one of those two things, then now all I need are tools to enhance the connection or the independence in a way that's consistent with our values. So I'm not going to respond in a favorable way to throwing the tantrum, but I am still going to go try and establish additional connection.
Right. Well, one of the things that's really cool, another side effect of special time, which is really cool, is that our kids begin to ask for it. And that's always how
Yeah.
I know with clients that they're doing what they need to be doing and that things are shifting, because you're right, like, kids will ask for attention and call for attention, because they need it,
Yeah.
I'll say, but often in ways that are really hard for us to respond to calmly or positively as parents. But when you start the practice of special time and they start to realize on a subconscious level, wow, when we're doing this, like, I feel better.
Mhm. Yeah.
And they're not, like, cognitively going over, "Wow, I feel more connected to my dad," or, anything like
Right.
that. But, like, it's a somatic experience that they're having.
Yeah.
And you call it something, and it doesn't have to be special time, but you call it something. They then have a vocabulary word that they can use,
Yeah.
and they will start asking for it. Like, I'll just say, when one of my kids was really young, he used to have such a hard time when I would go out for the evening, like, if it
Mhm.
wasn't friends, work, whatever,
Yeah.
and he would do that thing where he'd cling to my leg, right? The thing
Yes.
you can't get him off, and crying and screaming and hitting and all the things. And it was like by the time I peeled him off and got myself, out the door, I felt horrible. I mean,
Right.
how much fun was I going to have? How great was that evening going to go? I was just thinking about him.
Right.
And then I had this idea that I could start doing special time
Hmm.
before I left and give him that sort of extra,
Yeah, that
injection,
shot of connection.
yeah, of
Yeah.
connection before I left, and things started to go better. And then, I don't know, was it maybe a couple weeks later, and I said, "Hey, I'm going out tonight." And he said, "Well, can we do special time before you leave?"
Wow.
Right? And so he then had the vocabulary to ask for the thing that he knew helped him with that transition.
Yeah. That is such a powerful skill or a powerful tool. I love that. Okay, so we've cared for ourselves.
Yeah,
We've connected deeply. Now
yeah.
what?
So then, if we're going through like aggression steps, and mind you, I just want to say everybody's different.
Absolutely.
But if I were going to go sort of a step by step, the next thing that I would probably have you do is pay attention to when the aggression happens, because
Mhm.
99% of the parents who come to me will say things like, "It happens out of the blue," or "It's all the time." And I've been doing this for a long time, couple decades. I've never found that to be the case, not ever.
Yeah.
It's just not out of the blue. There
Yeah.
are always signs, and when we can identify those patterns, we empower ourselves to be able to take leadership roles and make plans for how we're gonna respond differently.
Yeah. I I love that.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
really
so, okay, so now I'm identifying the patterns and I realize that, this happens. I experienced this very thing. Um, if my boy's been spending too much time on his iPad watching YouTube videos, he'll start to get aggressive.
yeah.
And so now what do I do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a big can of worms you just tossed out there.
Yeah.
I just wrote an email to my, a newsletter to my followers this last week about this. I cannot tell you how many clients are coming to me in the last few months with their kids playing Roblox and
Mhm.
are so addicted that when the parents are asking them to get off, they're getting punched in the stomach.
Yeah.
They're getting, like, physically hurt, things are getting broken. Like, that's what this addiction is doing. So, I mean, depending on where you're at with that, like, where parents are at, I mean, there's a lot of different things that we're gonna do.
Yeah.
But the big picture, whether it be for tech or other triggers for the aggression, we're basically going to be looking at how do we set loving limits
Yeah.
for this child. So, and by a loving limit, I just mean the tone that we use is going to be loving. We're going to give it to them, as my mentor taught me, like we're giving them a gift. It's not a punishment. A limit isn't a punishment. It's
Yeah.
not like a consequence, like, "If you do this, then I'm gonna do that," kind of a
Yeah.
thing, not that tone, not that attitude at all. It's more the tone of, "Hey, I noticed that when you play Roblox for an hour after school, when I ask you to turn it off, we thought and you thought and I thought that it would just be an easy transition. But what's happening is I'm actually getting hurt or things are getting broken. So I thought this was going to work and it was okay, but it's not. And so I'm going to start holding limits around this. And you can tell them ahead of time, but then you're actually going to learn how to bring a limit, like not just yell it, but actually make the thing happen. So a lot of limit setting with aggression, a lot, a lot.
And to what extent should we give them input into what those limits ought to be?
That depends on their maturity level. It also
Yeah.
depends on your values and your relationship.
Yeah.
I would also say a litmus test that I like to use with parents is, are you confused about your limits or are you questioning this limit because you're afraid of how he's going to react to it or
Mm.
how he's going to respond? Because
Mm.
if that's the case, we need to revisit that.
Yeah.
If you're just thinking to yourself, well, he likes to have a say in what happens, and I'm okay with sort of co-creating this next plan with him and seeing how it goes. As long as X doesn't happen or Y doesn't happen or it's within certain boundaries, then you could absolutely start there. Like I just worked with a couple, and we had this exact conversation, and they decided because of who their boy is and what they know about him, he tends to be sort of a PDA kind of a profile, and he pushes back and he does better when he gets a say. And
Mhm.
so there was a red line, right? We can't have the aggression after the tech goes off, but there are a few ways that we could go about doing that. We could go cold turkey and do like a tech fast for 2 weeks, or we could go back to um kind of a time limit strategy that we had been doing a few months ago when and the aggression wasn't present then.
Yeah.
So they decided that even though they knew which one he would likely choose, they wanted to present him the option of, hey, this isn't working.
Yeah.
So we're gonna try something different. Would you like this or this? What do you think? What would you like to try
Yeah.
as the next experiment? And so that would be
Yeah.
an example of parents who decided, but a different set of parents could have decided something completely different, and that would have been fine. You're the expert on your family.
Right.
You get to decide.
Yeah, I think, my instinct on that, based on how I was raised, right, which is one of my fundamental things is that the way that I was raised is maladaptive for our modern society, and in a lot of ways. And the way that I was raised is my gut reaction is, okay, I'm going to bring the hammer. If you're going to have that kind of aggression after you play Roblox, well, then no frickin' Roblox.
Right.
And then it turns into this absolute nightmare because the aggression finds another outlet. And it ends up getting enhanced by that solution rather than suppressed by it.
Right. And so what I would do in working with parents is say, like, you know what? Actually, Sean, I think you have a reasonable ask or a reasonable experiment to try, which
Yeah.
is to go cold turkey and do a tech fast. Like, I think that's reasonable. Like, let's talk about if that aligns with your values, if, how, and then we can play out like how we think your kid's going to react. We can set you up for success in those situations, and we can prepare you so that you can show up still with that limit, but in a loving way. Like, I see this is hard. We're going to get through this.
Yeah.
I know you can do it, and I'm here to help. Because that's also empowering to them to know that they can actually do all right without it. They don't want to be aggressive.
Right.
Like they love that reassurance of, I know you can do this. And we're gonna get through this. I'm gonna help you.
Yeah, they actually don't wanna feel that way either.
No, they
And
feel
it feels like they
horrible.
do, but they don't.
They feel horrible.
Yeah.
They feel
I find another one of my, reflexes that doesn't really work all that well is to, like, try and stop and give them a lecture.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, and it's almost like I feel like I can reason him out of the tantrum or reason him out of the like, okay, I've taken the iPad away and now I'm gonna sit him down and make him listen to me drone on for 10 minutes about the importance of balance in life and all this BS. And I mean, you've done a lot of you speak very negatively to that, and it was eye-opening to me. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big like zip your mouth shut coach.
Yeah.
I'm not a let's name the feelings coach because what I've seen over 20 years of doing this is that 99.9% of the time when we try to like name the feeling, or if we are moving in with, like you said, this lecture about life and balance and all the things that are, important to us and rightly so, it doesn't land.
Yeah,
Right? It doesn't land in that moment, but it often also doesn't land outside the moment.
right.
And I'm just very pragmatic. If you're coming to me like there's aggression going on or your boy is struggling, like I want things to go better and I know that they can. And that's just not going to help it. I just say to parents straight up like, "Okay, I would just say to you like, how's that going for you, Sean? Is that working?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
working?
Yeah, and, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work."
I mean, one of the things that I realized, and it goes back to that metaphor of the Sherlock Holmes brain versus the Conan the Barbarian brain, the kids in Conan the Barbarian brain,
Right,
and if you try and use Sherlock tools to get to him in Conan mode, it's not gonna happen. It's exactly the same thing if I'm, having a yelling, screaming fight with my wife.
right,
It's not gonna happen. It doesn't work with adults either. It sure as heck isn't gonna work with
right.
a 5-year-old kid.
Yeah, no, I agree. I really agree, and I think there's just like a fundamental misunderstanding also just about why they're acting out in this way. And
Yeah.
there's I talk about the can versus the won't. And I
Mm.
think when we're responding in that way with the lectures and whatnot, we're in the mindset of my kid, won't do what he knows is right or won't do what he should do. And that's a really disempowering place to be. Like I don't even care if it's true or not. It just is
Right.
disempowering for us. I would much rather have you in that mindset of he's doing the best he can always. Like,
Yeah.
he just can't do better right now, which
Yeah.
isn't to say we're gonna excuse the behavior, but what it does is it makes us refocus back on ourselves
Yeah.
and think about how can we modify what we're doing, whether that be with limits or connection or, play, which we haven't stepped into, but which is another thing that I really talk about in terms of, aggression, like how do we use play strategically? Like, how can we use these things to help make the situation better? Because he doesn't want to be acting this way. He
Mhm.
just can't do differently in this moment.
Yeah, and we react as I love that framing, "Oh, he won't behave in this way." It's almost like saying, "Oh, he won't lift this 200-pound box."
Right.
Like, You wouldn't say that, but you do say it about behaviors. Well, he doesn't have it's the same exact thing in the 200-pound box situation. He doesn't have the strength or the skill or the muscles, and it's exactly the same thing with the intellectual skills, the intellectual muscles, the intellectual strength. He doesn't have to be able to adjust his behavior. It's the exact same thing, and yet we treat it differently.
I agree. I often use a broken arm example because I think parents really get it. I'll
Yeah,
say to them, "Look, if he broke his arm and he had, something that he had to write for school for homework, and he was right-handed and his right arm was in a cast and he couldn't hold a pencil,
right.
you wouldn't be yelling and screaming at him about, like, "Get that pencil in your hand, you need to write this homework out." You wouldn't. You
Yeah,
would get creative. You'd be like, "All right, well, do you wanna dictate and I'll write it?" Or, maybe there's some AI tool that you could use to do it, right? You'd
right.
help them get creative.
Yeah.
And we gotta do the same thing when it's just an emotional hurt rather than a physical hurt.
So let me ask you a provocative question of something that I've been thinking a lot about because what this brings to mind is that when you sit down and lecture them or treat them as if they're not doing their best or they're doing it intentionally, essentially what you're doing is shaming them. You're you're kind of trying to make them feel shame for not doing the right thing. And I have a hypothesis and I want your feedback on it.
Okay.
Is and the hypothesis is that there's never actually a valid use for shame as a parent. What is your reaction to that?
I love that you're asking me that question right now because I've been thinking about it a lot. Um, I've been thinking about it a lot because I recently did a training. I'm now trained in the SPACE program. It's a program that Eli Leibovitz at Yale put together to help kids with anxiety and OCD.
Okay.
And during that training, um, there was a section around aggression. And a lot of what he does and what he teaches is very similar to what I do. But one thing really struck me, and I'm trying to play around with it right now.
Mm.
And he said that if we think about like domestic violence, right? If there's aggression in the home, let's just say one parent is being violent towards another.
Mhm.
Secrecy is a problem, right? We need
Yeah.
to go public with it to protect the person and to move forward on the healing, on the healing journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he said, it's the same thing with this aggression. He said something to the effect of, and I'm totally paraphrasing, that like a little bit of shame is okay, is useful for the child in terms of being able to stop the aggression.
Mhm.
I'm not saying I agree or I disagree.
Yeah.
I'm simply playing with this right now with clients in a way that I haven't before. So, we talked earlier about setting up for success and setting ourselves up for success,
Yeah.
right? When we're first starting to address aggression. And one of the things there is like I said, are there people that we need to tell? How do we use the resources in our life? And he introduced an idea that I hadn't thought about, which is to use what he calls supporters in a really specific way where the child knows that each time they're aggressive, we are going to tell that adult, that supporter, and then that supporter reaches out to the child.
Mm.
Now, what's interesting here is that, yes, right, there's a little bit of shame there because any of us, when we do something mean or hurtful to somebody we love and we know other people we care about know about it, we feel shame,
Yeah.
but we also want to do better.
Yeah.
And the way that that supporter comes in and talks to the child is very aligned with everything that we've been talking about here. It's supportive, it's loving, it's like, I love you, you're a great kid, like I know you don't want to hurt your mom. I heard from her that after she asked you to turn off your Roblox yesterday, that you punched her.
Mhm.
Um, you know, we know that's not okay. So next time you feel that, how about you shoot me a text? Or how about you call me?
Yeah.
Or I don't know, like I'm just making this up on the
Yeah,
spot. But
or
like,
what do you think we should do next time?
or where do you think we should
What's our
exactly? So
plan?
there's
Yeah, yeah,
something
yeah,
there. I love that you just asked me about shame because 2 weeks ago I would have said there's no place for shame, no
yeah,
shame, never. We don't want to shame a child.
yeah,
And I'm always open to learning because, like I said, I'm very pragmatic. I want the aggression to stop. I mean, I have great success with families, but if we can do it faster, and more efficiently and stop the aggression sooner in a way that's still supportive of the child, you bet I'm in on that. So I'm playing around with this. So I don't
yeah.
know.
I've been thinking a lot about it too. And one of the things, so I've got a couple of thoughts on it that I'd love to share and get your feedback on. One of them is that I feel like shame is a tool that our society and our culture uses to communicate disfavor, and it is really powerful. Our our feeling, our need to be part of the herd is so strong that when we start to feel that shame, that societal shame, it becomes such a powerful force. We almost want we feel like we can't live without getting rid of it. And that's one thing. Another thing is, so it's really, really powerful, but as with many powerful things, it loses its effectiveness if it's overused. And so if you continuously shame somebody, eventually they're going to become immune to shame, which is actually a much worse problem than whatever it is that you think you're solving by shaming people. So that's another observation that I think is true.
Yeah.
What do you
I
think
mean,
about
I
those
think,
two things?
well, I think, I'll just say that I think shame as a tool is horrible.
Yeah.
Shame is not a parenting tool. Let's just
There,
say that
okay.
out.
That's probably a principle that we can, that is probably well established. I agree.
Yeah, I don't think our goal is ever to use shame
Yeah.
to transform behavior.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just getting curious with this new thing if there's a way to bring something that, Brene Brown talks about shame, kind of to paraphrase sloppily, grows in darkness.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so we don't want to keep that aggression locked up
Right.
in a dark room
Right.
because that child is feeling ashamed
Yeah.
and ashamed because of what he has done and is doing continually with the aggression, hurting somebody that he loves.
Yeah.
So that shame is growing anyway. So I'm going like, well, how do we compare that shame with the tinge of shame that he might feel if I tell grandma,
Mhm.
but grandma comes back lovingly saying, I know this is hard, but I'm 100% sure that you can do it.
Yeah.
I heard this happened, right? And I
Yeah.
know it's hard to do differently, but let's make up another plan. I know it's hard, but I know you can do it.
Yeah. So shame is not a parenting tool, but maybe there's a way when it happens naturally we can use it to our advantage. It's tough. It's a tough thing. But
Yeah,
I will say one other
yeah,
thing on that, which is that there's always a tension. And so anytime I find myself thinking A is always the right way to go, there's almost always a B that is diametrically opposed to that, and the real answer is somewhere between A and B. And so
yeah. I think we
never
get.
go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, I was just saying, I think we get stuck on sort of like the little details of how we're going to respond,
Yeah,
and I think we can just be broader. Like, what if we paint it with a broader brush and say, okay, if our child is struggling, they are needing us in some way. They are
right,
needing connection with us,
right.
and so what's a way that we can offer them connection right now? And that way might be different than it was 5 minutes ago, and it might be different than it looks in an hour,
Yeah,
and it might be different than it looks tomorrow, but
yeah.
we're always asking ourselves, like I'm always wanting us to be asking ourselves, how can I help that child? Like in Dan Siegel's word, how can I help him feel felt?
Mhm,
Feel my love. Just
mhm.
because, parents, well, I do love him. Okay, it's like, great. I love my kids too. Sometimes they feel that, and sometimes they don't,
Yeah.
depending on how I'm showing up
Yeah.
and what state they're in, right? So if we just put connection at the forefront, I think the details kind of fall into place.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to cut the knot. I You mentioned something about a play, and I wanted to let you riff on that for a moment. Talk to me about the need for boys to play.
Yeah, I mean, I think human beings in general need to play,
Yeah.
and I think boys oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes play rougher
Mhm.
than a lot of people are comfortable with. And so I think that we have to work on ourselves so that we can get a little bit more comfortable with that rough and tumble kind of play if that's something that our boy really thrives on. And so for example, like oftentimes I'll have a mom come to me and she's got two boys and they're going at each other hard, like they wrestle and they're rolling and they're jumping and they're doing all the things, and often someone will end up getting hurt at the end, and she's like, they're killing each other, they're hurting. She's trying to stop them. And I always suggest, let's start by asking them, like, do y'all want some help here? Or are you doing
Yeah.
okay? Because our perception of what's going on is often very different from what's going on for them. And so I just think we want to be sensitive. There's no one thing that's always going to be true. Every child is different. But in general, rough and tumble play is a great way to connect,
Yeah.
sweating together, laughing together, whether you're adults or children or with children, like it, 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 it breeds connection, which is what we want, right? We laugh together, we feel closer, we sweat, we feel closer, we get bonked, we get to support each other when we're hurt. It builds connection, it builds closeness. And those are all things that are like the foundation for the sort of whole house that we need to build around the aggression falling away. I think that's not a good metaphor, but essentially, like, we need that rough and tumble.
Yeah.
And oftentimes parents that I work with have to work through some discomfort around that, or they go too hard.
Yeah.
Right? There's some parents who are just like, "Yeah, let's get in there and play," but they're, like, pummeling the kid, right, with the pillow, and he's like, "Wow, this is too hard."
Yeah.
We need to be aware, like, the idea isn't, like, as the parent that we're gonna, like, play the crap out of our kid. No, it's like, let them win if they're little, and if
Yeah.
they're bigger, you still kinda wanna give them a chance. You gotta play harder, right? Because it's not fun for them. If you're got a 10-year-old and you're playing as if he's 3, it's not
All right.
fun. You have to up the resistance, but you're gonna play with that to the level where there's laughter happening. And the last thing I'll just say about this is when we have aggression, um, parents often feel like if they're playful in their response, that it's condoning the behavior.
Yeah.
And I just really want to say out loud that that is not the case. Our goal is to connect. Our goal is to help our child sense that we see his goodness underneath the behaviors and that we're going to help him through. And play is a great way to do that. It's not sending the message, okay, your behavior is okay. It's sending the message, okay, I see you're struggling. I'm not going to take those behaviors seriously. I'm going to try to get at you from another angle. I'm being strategic in my parenting.
Yeah, you're almost modeling, okay, look, this is an appropriate way to get the thing that you're after over in this inappropriate behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. If there are people out there right now who are dealing with aggressive kids, what should they do? If they want help right away, what should they do?
Yeah, I have a few ways that I help parents. So, if aggression is the number one issue, I have a course called Out with Aggression, a step by step practice to stop your boy's aggressive behavior and lift your parenting confidence. And I can give you the link to that. And it's a course that brings you through all the steps that I just mentioned, but with live support. So I will be there, and there's a community of people who will be there to answer your questions and to cheer you on and all of that. So it's not just, here, go figure it out. So if aggression is top of mind and that is something that you're ready to commit to nipping in the bud and you're ready to start, that would be the best place to start. If a group experience is something that you've discovered doesn't work well for you, you tend to not show up and you need the personal trainer. I do have one-on-one coaching as well. That could be because you're struggling with aggression in your family. It could also be for anxiety. It could be for sleep issues or sibling issues or
Yeah.
whatever. I do one-on-one coaching. And then lastly, if you feel like, things are a little bit rocky, not horrible, but a little bit rocky, or, they're okay, but you just want to be in a community of parents who are committed to parenting their boys peacefully and protecting their boys' right to feel and process emotions and grow into emotionally intelligent men. They just want to be in a community of people who are actively committed to that and thinking about that regularly. I have a membership community called Parenting Boys Peacefully, and we would be happy to welcome you into that as well.
I love all of those resources, and those links are in the show notes. Tosha, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and sharing your wisdom. It is so much in line with the mission of raising men, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
I really appreciate the opportunity to share my thinking with you. Thank you for trusting me with your audience. I don't take it lightly, so thank you.
Thank you. Tosha Schore is the founder of Parenting Boys Peacefully and the Out with Aggression program, and also the author of Listen, 5 Simple Tools to Meet Your Everyday Parenting Challenges. Check her out in the show notes. And remember, you are a great parent. Raising Men is produced by Feel Hernandez. This episode was edited by Ralph Tolentino.